Welcome to Palm City Presbyterian Church here in Southern Florida. We just wrapped up an installation where we upgraded the lighting system, the projectors, the audio mixing system, and we even upgraded the video and streaming system to 4K with new cameras. This is one of two worship spaces they have here at the church. So this is their traditional worship style sanctuary. It has beautiful architecture and beautiful stained glass windows. It's a very bright space. The music itself is also very traditional with a choir, an organ. They have a handbell choir, timpanis, as well as an acoustic grand piano. So if you've been watching the channel, you know that most of our spaces are a bit more modern in their style with your typical electronic rock band. But here it was a great experience for our team to be able to integrate the latest tech with this timeless infrastructure. If you have a space like this at your church, you're definitely gonna wanna watch this video to the end because we share a ton of great tips for upgrading tech for traditional style worship.
So one of the first things we did in this space, this is actually a few months back already, we replaced their projectors first thing. Their projectors were in really bad shape. They were very dim. They weren't bright enough or poppy enough for this room. They didn't want to go with LED walls. They wanted something that when they were done with it on Sunday mornings, or if they had a concert and they didn't need lyric projection or any type of computer graphic support, they wanted to be able to take those screens and put them away. So what we did is we installed these motorized screens. They had motorized screens in here, but over time those screens can kind of deteriorate. So they were pretty bad shape by the time we took them out of here. But these new ones look fantastic. And these are about, I think, a 9,000 lumen projector that we put in here. They are rear throw projectors and they have removable lenses on them. So you can actually get a few different types of lenses for the projectors that we installed here. I think they turned out great. I was very impressed with how bright they are in this space. I don't know if you've noticed on the way into this building, but this building is full of windows. There's a ton of natural light in this place, and to have projectors that are still not only visible but look really good in a space this bright, it was a really good surprise to have them look this good in this space.
We also added a confidence monitor on the back wall, which allows for the pastor, a liturgist, a scripture reader, anybody on stage to see what's going on the screens, so they're not awkwardly having to look at the screens for content. Adequate stage lighting is foundational to any church tech setup, regardless if it's modern or a traditional sanctuary like this one. Prior to the lights we just installed, they had some track lighting and it was not nearly bright enough. It made it difficult even for people who are just in the room to be able to actually clearly see what is happening on stage. And then of course the live stream was very rough as well because those cameras weren't getting the light they needed. So we installed 14 Pro Church lights, the Pro Wash Maxes, to have a nice simple front wash on this stage. Notice there's no haze, there's no movers, there's not a lot of the eye candy type light here to do anything fancy. It's really just providing a nice even coverage of wash on the stage. So now the church members can clearly see the pastor preaching, the reader at the lectern, the handbell choir, the timpani players, anything else that happens on stage. It's going to look great both in person and online, especially with the new cameras that we spec.
One of the things that they brought up the first time we were talking to them about this space is they wanted to have a much better looking broadcast for their live stream for anyone watching at home that couldn't make it here on a Sunday. Previously, they had some really old, I think they were even off-brand PTZ cameras, but in this space, we really couldn't put up really nice broadcast cameras with someone running them. There's just no space to put something like that, and it would actually look a little out of place in this traditional space. So what you're watching me on right now is actually a Canon CRN 700 camera. This is a shot from their broadcast system, and we think it turned out amazing. We think these cameras look fantastic. We're just so impressed by not just even how they look, but how they fit into the space. We'll show some B-roll of what these things look like in the space, but they're white cameras that just blend right into these white walls. You hardly can tell that they're there. In fact, the first Sunday that I was here testing all of this stuff, making sure that it was working for them for their services, we had several people say, I thought you were installing cameras. They didn't even see the cameras when they first walked in. So we're just really happy with how these cameras all worked out and how they look. In this space, we actually installed 2 Canon CRN 700s on the side walls to get some nice close-up shots. And we actually installed a Canon CRN 300 on the back wall in the center for more of a center establishing shot. So we're really happy with how these cameras turned out. Something to think about when you're selecting the cameras that you want to use in your space. The Canon CRN 700s actually have 12G SDI output. What does that mean for you? It means you can send 4K video over SDI. The Canon CRN 300 does not. It only sends it over HDMI. And the Canon CRN 500 is the same. It only sends the 4K signal out of its HDMI or over NDI. So for your application, you got to make sure that you have all of the right adapters, all of the right equipment to make sure that you can get 4K from your camera into your switcher if you're trying to end up with a 4K solution. One other thing to think about with the Canon CRN 700s versus even the 500s, the motors in the camera are much better. So they're better for more precise movement of the camera. They're better for better zooming, all of those little things. It's a more expensive camera for a reason. All of the little things inside the camera are better, adding up to a much better experience when using the CRN 700 versus even the CRN 500.
This is our equipment rack number 1 for this space, which contains most of the control gear. At the top, we have our lighting world with our DMX distro unit. The DMX interface is right behind there as well, coming from the computer running Light Key. And then we have the Wall Panel Pro by Pro Church Lights. This is what controls the wall panel that you see right here. So we can assign presets to the stage lighting, and they can easily call those up. They can toggle between the wall or the control from Light Key, the console. Moving down the rack, we have the middle Atlantic sequencer, so the whole system can be turned on or off with the click of this button. Below that, we have our network world. So we have a switch that was provided by the church, and we are tying off of the network connection there and their fiber line that they have coming in here to that switch. That goes into our Dream Machine, which is our router for the sanctuary. Underneath the Dream Machine router, we have the Unify Pro Max 24-port switch, which gives us plenty of network connections with some spares, and it also has PoE++ connectivity, which is important for the CRN 700 cameras. If you plug those into a normal PoE+ port, they will not work. Make sure you have a PoE++ switch. The more we use Unify networking solutions in our installs, it just becomes so much simpler and more robust for our team to manage and reconfigure things if we need to down the road with a client to support the system. So we have not only camera control and the internet service provider coming into here for our devices, but we also have a separate VLAN for Dante audio for our wireless microphones and some other Dante enabled devices. Below the switches, we have a nice patch bay to really help with cable management. We've got a brush plate for other cables that don't necessarily need to hit a patch bay first. Then we have our KVMs. So we have 2 computer workstations up here in the tech booth, and one of them is for our graphics computer for Pro Presenter, and it also runs Light Key. The other KVM is for the broadcast computer, which runs ATEM control software to control the video system. Below that, we have the Sonnet Rack Mac Mini. We have only one space being used right now here, and they've got an extra space if they're going to add a Mac Mini in the future. This Sonnet Rack Mac is very cost effective. I think it's just a couple $100, a very clean, robust way to rack mount a Mac Mini. The more premium rack mount solution from Sonnet is the X-Mac Mini Server, because this contains a place for your computer and it has an expansion chassis card slot for a video card like the Decklink 8K that we're using here. And I'm going to move the rack out because I actually want to show you the back of this expansion chassis so you can see the connectivity they have. So here is the back of that expansion chassis in the Sonnet X-Mac server. So you can see the Mac Mini in there with all the ins and outs. And then I'll close this lid here. It looks nice and clean. We have our Decklink 8K. This sends our Pro Presenter screens to the video switcher. And then over here, I actually added another USB-A hub to the expansion chassis. So now for our DMX interface, we have a connection, as well as for our KVM, we have a USB connection out here on the back of the computer. There is a grommet here for running additional cables into the chassis. And then we got another HDMI port and a network port here as well. I want to show you guys one more cool tip. So we have a bi-directional SDI HDMI converter 3G right there. I'll get out of the way so we can get a good shot at that. What we're doing here is we wanted to have the ability to share the desktop of this Mac computer to the video switcher. So the same HDMI feed, or at least one of them, that's being fed to the KVM HDMI video for the monitors on the desktop, we split out that same video signal to then go to the video switcher, which is down here in Video World. So now when you go to the multi-view at our video switcher, this is the desktop of that computer, which is running LightKey right now. But that's a very important thing to have, especially if you're using a DeckLink video card and you want to just send the desktop of that computer to the screens. If someone has PowerPoint or Google Slides or something, they just want to like show a video up there that doesn't have to involve ProPresenter, they can just switch the video switcher output to show that desktop and send it to the projection screens. So it's really nice having this Middle Atlantic 44U rack on casters, so then I can easily put this back into place. It's out of the way, but for serviceability, we roll it out. I can easily access everything I need without having to crawl through the actual equipment. Moving on down the equipment rack, we've got just a couple blanks. We've got a shelf here. Then we also have a sliding shelf. Earlier, I put my laptop here when I was trying to configure something on the network switch. Then below that, we have the ATEM Constellation 2ME 4K video switcher. So this is what allows us to have a 4K video system, and it does look phenomenal. The church is soon going to be upgrading from the box caster that they have here, which can only stream in 1080p. Eventually, they'll be able to get an encoder that has 4K capability to distribute online.
So for this broadcast station, we wanted to come up with some solutions for them, just as backups, redundancies, and just ways to also run everything with ease. One of the things that I am really a big proponent of is finding ways for one person to do multiple things. We know this for working in the church world as long as I was, that it's sometimes tough to find volunteers every weekend. So I like to create systems where one person can do a lot of things, but also isn't stressing out about doing a lot of things. So going through what we have here, starting on the right, we obviously have this computer. It's running the ATEM software control. One of the things we wanted is a backup in case the Stream Deck, because we're using the Constellation 4K switcher, there's no interface built in. You have to either hit the buttons on the screen on the face of it, or you have to buy an interface of some kind. They have some interfaces that are really nice, and they are thousands of dollars, which didn't make a lot of sense for this space since it's really just one person operating all this broadcast gear. But we wanted to give them some redundancy. I don't know if you guys have ever been using a Stream Deck on a Sunday morning and you're using Companion and Companion freaks out and you have to restart it. Well, in that instance, they do have some functionality with this switcher through this ATEM micro panel. Now, some things to consider when you're thinking through this ATEM micro panel: it does not work like one of their other panels. It does not work over IP through the network where it will function even if this computer goes down. I'll show you. If I quit this ATEM software control software, no more ATEM micro panel. So in order for that to work, it does need to be connected to a computer running the software, but it's still redundant in the sense that if for some reason Companion goes down and stops working, they still have a Canon control unit here. Is the Canon RCIP100 controller for all three cameras. You can see I can jump to a camera and steer it back and forth. Here's two, there's one. So I have the ability to control cameras, and I still have the ability to switch even if Companion goes down. But here's where it gets a lot of fun, especially for me, if you do have a Stream Deck and you do run Companion. I'm gonna show you some ways that I've made this so one person can do a lot of different things here in one location. So first off, I've got some camera control here. You'll notice that I've got camera power buttons for all three cameras. If I hit those, you'll notice that those cameras all go into standby mode. This is a great way so that they're not on 24/7. It's going to save the life of the cameras. But very quickly on a Sunday morning, I can turn those on. I went one step further just in case the volunteers didn't know how to turn the camera on, and every Sunday morning in Companion, I was able to set a schedule that turns the cameras on at about 7 a.m., turns them off at about 1 p.m. on a Sunday. That way, no matter what, they should always go off at the right time. They should always be on at the right time. But if they've got a special event, they can do it manually. So the other thing that I've done here, and I've done this with a lot of different PTZ cameras, and I've done it with Blackmagic switchers in the past, is I've got three cameras, and I want to be able to control those cameras, control their presets, and be able to switch them all at the same time. So one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is both recall a preset and get it ready to go live on the switcher. So for instance, right now, you'll see this is green. That's because this camera 2, is in preview. Camera 3 is in program, so it is red. Camera 1 is in neither, so it's not lit up. But let's say I want to recall a preset on camera 1. I'm going to recall preset 1 on camera 1. You're going to see camera 1 go to that preset, but also you'll notice it went to preview. If I did that to camera 2 right now is on the pulpit. If I go to a different preset on camera 2, it recalls the preset, but it also goes to the preview. And the reason that is handy is because now on the bottom of this, I have a simple fade and cut button for my broadcast switcher. So very quickly, I can recall a preset and I can fade to that shot. I can recall a preset on my camera 2 and cut to that shot. And very quickly, one person can set these presets up ahead of time so they have all the shots that they'll need during a service and very quickly recall the shots that they want and fire those shots. The beauty of this is because it's lit up red, you just got to teach your volunteers, don't touch red. Don't recall a preset that's live or it's going to move the camera around while it's live on air. So this is a really simple way for one person to do multiple things. But I took this one step further because they really wanted that when they started streaming, they didn't want to hear the room. They didn't want to hear all the mics being opened up because they just wanted the graphics. And so they just wanted to be able to mute the broadcast. They wanted a simple solution for that. So they got an Allen & Heath SQ7, which we'll look at in a second here. And I was able to actually connect it through Companion so that I can mute and unmute their broadcast feed with the touch of a button. This is both sending and receiving data from the SQ7 to show that it is muted and unmuted. If you peek over here at this broadcast fader, if we mute and unmute on the Companion on the Stream Deck, it mutes and unmutes on the SQ7. There are a lot of different tech solutions out there using Companion software, so it's a lot of fun to dive into and figure out ways to help your church in how they're presenting the gospel. One of the things that I'm a big proponent of is being able to monitor your broadcast audio as far down the line as possible. So in this instance, I would really like to monitor what's coming out of this Blackmagic switcher and not what's just coming off the board. So what we did here is coming over to this multi-view, we have SDI running from the switcher. So what we did is we first ran that SDI into an SDI audio extractor that Blackmagic sells, and then we went through that back into the multi-view, so we still have video here, but then out of that we went into this little headphone amplifier so we can monitor exactly what audio is being sent out of the Blackmagic switcher so we know if it sounds good, if it's distorting, all of that.
The speaker system they're running here is a Meyer point source system, and we did not update that. It actually still sounds pretty great for the room, especially for the style where they're just amplifying voices and a piano. So we determined that upgrading the PA in this space wasn't really necessary at this stage, but they did need an upgrade to their mixing system, and this has really streamlined it and it sounds a lot better. So we've got the Allen & Heath SQ7. This is the brain of our audio system now, and with this Allen & Heath SQ7 we installed a Dante network card. So we have, in addition to the S-Link connection to the stage box with Allen & Heath, we have 64 ins and outs on the Dante network. So all of the audio from computers, as well as from some of the Dante AVIO adapters. I've actually got one right here. This is the AVIO to USB-C adapter. So you can plug into a USB-C device like a smartphone and play audio to the Dante network into the mixing console. I'm also a big fan of the Dante AVIO Bluetooth IO adapter. So you're able to just link up Spotify or any music player or app on your phone or your computer over Bluetooth wirelessly to the adapter, and then from the adapter the audio gets sent on the Dante network. You can route it anywhere, and then in this particular case we're routing it to a channel here on the mixing console. So if someone's in here, they just want to play some background music from their phone wirelessly, this guy will help them do that. And over here we have the USW Pro switch. This is an 8-port switch, and it gives us the Pro switch capabilities, which I think is especially important when you're running a VLAN dedicated for Dante and you want the Pro AV features on the Unify switches. We've had really great experience with that so far once it is set up correctly. Now over to the third position here in the tech booth, and the final one. It is the workstation for ProPresenter and for LightKey. You guys have seen these apps many times on the channel. What's really great is when you can get them talking to one another. So we actually have macros programmed on the ProPresenter documents to trigger different LightKey scenes right here. So if I go ahead, I'll click the first song, you'll see it change the scene here. The volunteers here have found it to be super user-friendly to be able to pre-program lighting scenes before the service, and then during the service, no one's actually having to operate LightKey. It all happens automatically depending on the lighting settings that they've configured within ProPresenter. And then over here we have another Stream Deck XL with plenty of buttons and even more buttons. We could put more presets on here, but you can select these different macros. And again, these are actually selecting macros in ProPresenter, which are then triggering lighting scenes within LightKey. So it's very great when you want to have a one button press functionality to make something quick and easy for volunteers to operate. Finally, you can see the KVM extender. This is the receiver side of it. This is a data cable that goes to the transmitter at the equipment rack where the computer is. And we decided to mount these on top because I think it's more useful to have these USB ports easily accessible. We could hide this underneath the desk. It might look a little bit cleaner, but for practicality and if you want to plug in a USB device, it's much simpler to put it up here.
So on their pulpit and their lectern, they actually had some old mounted gooseneck microphones that they used once in a while. They didn't use them all the time. They used the lectern one more, but they were going out. In fact, a lot of their stage pockets were going out. We actually replaced all of the jacks in every one of their stage pockets here. One of the things they needed was a solution where they could still have a lectern and a pulpit microphone, but I wanted the option to get them out of the way, move them somewhere else, whatever. So these microphones are spec'd a lot in the corporate world. These are MX 418DS microphones. And the way that these work out of the box is they have a push button here and it's on all the time. And if you push the button and you hold the button down, it mutes it. So for a conference call, it's on until you go, oh, I don't want anyone to hear me. But in this scenario, there's a way to take this plate off and you flip the switches to the right section so that someone walks up to the pulpit or the lectern and all they have to do is push the button, the microphone turns on. This microphone would be live in the system right now if the system were on. And if you push it, it turns it right back off. So these were a great solution to give them the ability to have some mute and unmute functions right in front of them on stage, easy to use for volunteers. Previously in the space, they had some microphones hanging from the ceiling. They weren't working very good. They weren't working at all by the end, and they needed a way to mic their choir because in a traditional space, you've got choir. They got a choir here every single weekend in this space. So these are some microphones that we have used in a few different spaces, and we absolutely love the way these sound. They're not cheap microphones, they're good microphones. So these are the Audix Micro Boom microphones. They come with this giant long neck here, and the mic's all the way up there, and you can put them on any straight stand, and you can get about 8 to 10 feet in the air, actually probably more than that if you put them straight up in the air. But these are great choir microphones. We have 2 of them here for this stuff, and then we actually got them 2 more that they can move around for things like their handbell choir. So really, really great microphones. If you're a church that has choir every weekend and you need a really good solution to your choir, these Audix Micro Boom microphones are fantastic. And just another note on these microphones, they are super cardioid, so they do a really good job of picking up what's in front of them and not what's behind them. So they're great microphones for a choir. So like I said, when we came into the space, a lot of these connections on the stage had gone out and they weren't working anymore. And rather than just going through and subbing out some of them, the ones that weren't working, and then trying to keep the rest of them functioning, we didn't really want to leave and then in a year from now, more start going bad. So we just swapped out every single one of these jacks and soldered new connections on all of them. So we actually were very happily surprised. We weren't sure if any of the cable underneath the stage was damaged because there's really no access to it. We were very surprised when we put these all in and they all function now. They have every single one of their stage pockets is fully functional and they go to a rack in the back room that we can show you right now.
Welcome to our Backstage Audio World equipment rack. So we have a Middle Atlantic. This is only a 21 space rack because don't need a lot of audio equipment up here. We don't have amps because the Meyer system has powered speakers. And in this rack, we've got a light. We've got our 16-port network switch, which again, the Pro line of switches is really important to spec for having Dante capability on your network. And then moving down, we've got some space if they want to add some devices. We've got some drawers for storage. And then we've got the RF Venue Distro 9, which is our antenna combiner for the wireless mics. Out on the stage, we have a white architectural RF venue antenna that blends right in. No one can even see that it's there, and it gets us a really solid, strong signal of RF to our wireless microphones. The wireless microphone system we're running here is the ULXD system, which is one step below the flagship Shure Axient system. The audio quality is phenomenal, and you can also use Dante with this system. So we have 6 of these channels being used right now over Dante Audio to the SQ7 mixing console, and that frees up the inputs down here on our Allen and Heath stage box. So the analog inputs can be reserved for the microphones that you just saw on stage and any other devices that they want to plug in via analog connections on stage. And then below that, they do have an amplifier here where if they want to send some mix outputs to the stage, they have some passive speaker floor wedges to have some monitor mixes. That wraps up all that we installed here at Palm City Presbyterian Church. Thank you to them for entrusting this project to our team here at Churchfront. And with all of our projects, I love the things that we learn on every single job, because every church is unique and it requires a unique solution. So if your church is looking to upgrade AVL systems, if you'd like to partner with our team for your worship and production ministry, don't hesitate to reach out to us at churchfront.com. Thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.